Hi, we are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome you to a new 4-episode series with Amanda Lapean, a myofunctional therapist, massage therapist with advanced training in fascial work, dental hygienist, wife, and mom of 2 teen boys. She's also the founder of Chin Up, where she helps kids and adults get to the root cause of issues like poor sleep, snoring, crowded teeth, mouth breathing, jaw pain, and chronic muscle tension. What sets Amanda apart is that she even goes beyond the mouth, integrating massage and fascial work to create deeper, longer lasting results. Through her virtual and in person practice, she's known for her fun, simplified, and positive approach and her ability to connect the dots in a way that finally makes sense for families. And we are excited to introduce her to you now. Let's get started with today's episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We are in episode number 3 with Amanda. Welcome back, Amanda.
Hello there. We're having fun today.
We are having fun, and I think we're heading into your favorite episode, if I am remembering this correctly. You are just like a fascia nerd, so in like such a good way. And so if you guys are just jumping into episode 3 here because this title caught your eye, I'm actually going to ask you to hit pause and head back to episodes 1 and 2 because they're going to provide a really good foundation into what we're talking about here today. In episode 1, we talked about mouth breathing. In episode 2, we talked about nose breathing. What's the difference? What should you be doing? What should you not be doing? You're going to have to go back to those episodes to find out. But today we're talking about fascia and how it's really like this hidden web inside of our entire body. So I guess my first question is, you're a myofunctional therapist. We're talking about the mouth and the nose and breathing in like the first 2 episodes. Why are we talking about fascia in this episode?
Yeah. So I think the quick answer is let's be curious. Working with people's mouths, sometimes I can't always get the results that I want. And sometimes you have to refer out to other providers, like we've talked about ENTs. But other times we need to look below our chin, below our shoulders of why we're not getting the results. And that's where fascia plays in. Sometimes I can't get a tongue into a certain position, or someone has such strong memory within their tissues. It's really that fascia that's restricting what I'm able to do as a myofunctional therapist. So I'm really blessed to be a massage therapist. So they say it's a license to touch. I can do body work. And so it's something I can do in addition is when I get stuck in the mouth area, I can start to address other parts of the body. And fascia has been one of those key pieces where I get amazing results.
Can you define fascia and help people understand like what actually is it? What are we talking about here?
Absolutely. So fascia, some people more commonly will just call it connective tissue. It's kind of an easier way to think about it. But fascia really is, it's 3D connective tissue. It what gives us our shape. So fascia is, if you think of like a spider web, it's very thin, it's per se lacy that way, but it actually surrounds every single cell in our body, every single muscle fiber. It surrounds every nerve, every organ. Like it is everywhere in our body. It connects everything.
So I don't know if people are gonna like this example or not, but like if you're getting ready to prepare dinner and you have like a chicken breast there and you have like that white, like kind of translucent but whitish like film that you can like peel off sometimes, is that fascia? Is that what we're kind of talking about? Is that what it looks like?
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
actually where my mind always goes when I think of fascia. That's exactly what fascia is. But correct, it can be not the most appetizing to think about that. But yeah, that's exactly what fascia is. And yeah, it's everywhere.
Okay. So if it's connecting us all the way from our mouth to our toes, why did you want to have an episode on this? Like it's coming from our tongue specifically. I'm guessing that's what we're going to spend a lot of time talking about. How does our toes connect to our tongue?
Yeah. So we have a deep fascia train. And so our fascia, correct, it starts down in our feet on the bottom of our foot. And our fascia runs all the way up the inside of our legs, through our pelvic floor, through our diaphragms, up through our neck. And the fascia actually ends in our tongue. And so it's one of those things, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And so when you start to look at restrictions and movement patterns and areas that you get stuck, Sometimes you can help on the tongue end of it, and sometimes you have to help on the toe end of it. And so that's why I boldly look beyond just the mouth when I'm working with movement patterns, because being a myofunctional therapist, I am working a lot with fascia just of that mouth. But fascia being like a spider web, think of a fly getting stuck in a spider web. That perfect little pattern that that spider creates. Once that fly lands there, it starts to pull, it starts to tug somewhere. And that's what happens in our body. And sometimes that pull or that tug is not up in the face area where I'm working.
Hmm. Is this so now you have me thinking about tongue ties and lip ties. Are those related to fascia tightness or are those actually muscle tissue structures? What is that? What's causing those?
From what I've seen, it can be very fascia related. So, as a myofunctional therapist, I would encourage anyone, strongly encourage anyone, before you even look at getting your tongue released, if it's something that's been diagnosed by a doctor and recommended, you want to make sure you do at least 5 weeks of exercises first. One of those reasons is I can work with the fascia and the strengthening underneath the tongue. And when you go in for your release, even though you may not feel your tongue or you may be numb, they can see where that restriction sits of your fascia chain. I've had many doctors reach back out and say, it is amazing working with a myofunctional therapist to have somebody properly prepared to come in because I can see exactly where that restriction is rather than doing a little bit more guesswork. And afterwards, you can continue. So it can be similar to like yoga for the mouth. You can get the tongue to move farther into a position you would not be. So some people realize once they start to work stretching their muscles and that connective tissue, your fascia, you can actually get into a position that you can function fine with. And they're very happy with where they're at that point. So working with people who have chosen to go through, who have been diagnosed by a doctor of being restricted with the tongue, one lady I remember came back. She said, I got into my car, and for the first time ever, I could move my head far enough to the side to actually see the blind spot driving home. I've never been able to turn my head that far. So
This
that
was after
tells
a tongue release?
it was, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We had done 5 weeks of myofunctional therapy and she went in for her tongue release. So that tells you how far down that goes. I had another lady who did not share with me until after the fact. Her incontinence went away. She's like, "This is something I've dealt with." And I've worked with pelvic floor therapists because we have fascia bridges, fascia chains, and the pelvic floor is one of the other areas we have a lot of fascia, just like your diaphragm, your tongue. And she says her incontinence went away, and that was not even a piece that was something we were working towards. I had somebody come back and tell me that their shoe size changed. By working with the tongue, it released the whole fascia chain going down and their foot relaxed. You'll see a correlation with kiddos who walk on their tippy toes. Sometimes once the tongue gets addressed, they walk more flat-footed naturally. That's an example of how it's directly connected between your toes to your tongue.
Wow. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about myofunctional therapy, and that's going to be where you're giving like mouth exercises. It's kind of like physical therapy, but for the mouth, right? Like myo is mouth. You're going to be giving them exercises and teaching them how to utilize their tongue and breathe properly and things like that. Is that a accurate definition?
Yep,
Short definition?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay. But then there's also myofascial release. So again,
yep.
mouth. Now we're talking about fascia. Is this something that people can do at their homes or is this something they're coming to like see someone like you for? What's kind of the difference between these two? Because myofunctional therapy, myofascial release, like it
Mhm.
all sounds like the same thing.
It does actually. Yeah, so myelin means like a surround like muscles. So sometimes it's like the muscles and your connective tissue. Correct. Myofunctional therapy, that is working on movements patterns. It's neuroplasticity. That's the cool thing with our bodies. We are forever changing. We can rewire ourselves. And that's what I do as a myofunctional therapist. I work with movement patterns to teach our nerves new automatic ways that we subconsciously can just do what we want it to, such as keep the lips together where they used to default to being open. So, myofascial release, think of going in for a massage. Most of us have had a massage. You imagine someone putting oil on it, doing a lot of rubbing. Sometimes you find that deep, tight spot that you kind of work into. So, remove the oil and remove the rubbing. Now, imagine that tight spot that you feel. Let's say by your shoulder blade on our back. A lot of people get very tight back there. Now, imagine someone taking your shoulder blade and kind of pushing it up into that tight spot. You can even lift your shoulder and kind of push it back. You can feel that tight area right now. So, if I would take my hands and kind of gently put pressure right down in that tight area, this 3D connective tissue of fascia starts to melt underneath my hands. After a minute or two, you can apply a little pressure and an outward pressure. You create a little bit of a natural stretch or working into those tension points. And it's a gentle way that you're suggesting to the body to just relax, to let go. And it naturally just soothes itself. And that's how you release fascia. It's long, slow, gentle holds. One of the reasons I actually got really interested in fascia work is I had a running injury. And I actually worked with different physical therapists. I had different body work done, and no one could really figure out why I was still having pain in my hip with running. And I did some fascia work, and that was actually the missing piece. It was deep in my abdomen. Something was really stuck, and just doing some fascia holds, I went from walking with a limp, seriously, to the next day, I went out and did my typical like 3-mile run. And I couldn't believe it. And that's where I really started to lean in as a massage therapist. You know, I had done some advanced fascia work classes with John Barnes, and I knew what it could do, but until I actually experienced that myself of seeing that instant change, that's where I'm like, okay, this is more impactful than what I ever realized. And that's why I tell people, like, just get curious and try different things because you don't always know what it's going to be until you choose that.
So as you're talking about it, it's a little bit different than muscle, but it is similar to muscle where it can be released or stretched, right? Does it have muscle memory like muscle would where let's say that you chronically have had issue in your shoulder, right? And then you release it. So like even your example with your hip, is that something that could kind of like creep back? And obviously if you have ongoing habits that are the cause, it's probably going to creep back. But if you don't have ongoing habits and it's just like a release, is it something that can creep back because of memory? Or is it something that would just be like released and done?
Fascia definitely has memory. So, if you think of someone who's a chronic mouth breather, so taking this back to myofunctional therapy, if you're a chronic mouth breather, your fascia literally molds itself to help support the jaw position you always hold your jaw in. And so, if someone's a mouth breather and they're always holding their mouth open, your fascia will actually create like a casting or a memory so your body doesn't have to work as hard to hold it in that spot. So if here's another great analogy. If you think about a door in your house and you go past and you try to swing that door shut and you have to stop and actually put a little force on it to get that door to stop. There's nothing wrong with the door, the movement. The hinges are what's rusty. And so if you come through and oil those hinges, the next time you come through, you can gently tap that door and it swings shut. And so a fascia is kind of like that oil on the hinges. You're getting it to glide smoothly and and you can do the movement patterns that you want. So if you think about it, myofunctional therapy is training the muscle where fascia, we're softening that memory so it can support the new habit that we're creating.
So what you're saying is basically mouth issues can actually be posture and tension issues that are stemming from somewhere else in the body.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's why, I boldly look beyond the mouth, whether it's something in my realm of it could be a fascia restriction, or sometimes that's where craniosacral therapy, finding a really good chiropractor, getting them to um, an uricentric dentist. I refer out a lot to other specialties, and I greatly encourage people to work with more than one specialty beyond myself because this is very multifaceted when you start to look at breathing issues. It is not a short one and done, and one person is going to fix it all for you. That's a very unrealistic expectation.
Mhm. We've talked so much about with breathing, specifically the mouth and the nose, but you've also mentioned the diaphragm is involved in this fascia chain, right? And
Mhm.
so that's a huge part of our breathing. So what are you noticing, or do you have any stories about, or what can you tell us about the diaphragm and its role in not only this fascia piece, but also related to our inlets for breathing?
Yeah. So when we mouth breathe, a lot of times we do a lot of shallow breathing. You'll see the top of your chest rise and fall. If you're nasal breathing, you'll see your actual rib cage or your abdomen. You will breathe a lot deeper when you're nasal breathing. Because when we nasal breathe, it slows down our breathing and it gives us time to have even a better oxygen exchange. So it's like anything, if you're not using it, you're losing it. So if we're not nasal breathing, we're not using our actual diaphragm muscle. Our diaphragm muscle sits underneath our rib cage and it gets really stiff when we don't use it. When our diaphragm gets stiff, you can get a lot of neck and jaw tension because it's so tight. It literally, when we talked about that fascia going down our system, that's the way a tight diaphragm will pull. And again, that's where you have to get curious and look, where is that tightness. So being a massage therapist and doing fascia work, working with people's diaphragms. It's interesting, even in between our rib bones, we have itty bitty muscles, our intercostals. Again, a podcast for a whole nother topic is doing cupping, three-dimensional stretching. But hands-on fascia work is another way without cupping to be able to stretch those muscles. And you can see after you work on someone's rib cage and the diaphragm area, they'll tell you it feels so light just to breathe. And it's not even changing the nasal or versus the mouth breathing. Just breathing itself is so much simpler when you soften those diaphragm muscles and can get that flexibility in something that's so automated.
I got cupping done at my chiropractor a long time ago for the first like a long time ago. First time I did cupping with her, and I had a lot of tightness in my left rib cage back area. And we did the cupping there, and she like nailed the spot. And so afterwards, I could not do enough rolling. I could not do enough massage to get that spot like loosened up, and I could feel it. Even breathing into it, trying to stretch my rib cage, I just couldn't do it. That cupping like, it was amazing. I'm like, "It did it. It fixed this." So, we ended up buying a cupping kit from Amazon, and my husband and I do cupping on each other every once in a while too, but it really works. This is not like woo-hoo stuff that we're talking about with fascia. It's amazing. It really is.
And I'll do my due diligence. I do cupping at home, even with my own family. It's one, if you know an athlete, a biker, a marathon runner, they are one of the best ways actually to release a tight IT band. Cupping is the top thing that I would go to. So there's a side tip, but you do have to be careful if you start to cup yourself because the vacuum, the pressure creates going up. It changes your lymph, your circulation. You want to make sure you're draining when you start to cup. So make sure you do your homework before you start to cup on yourself. Just as I want to make sure if you're doing it, you get really good health benefits out of it.
To finish out this episode, do you have anything that we could do, like even being on here, that would kind of give us this experience of feeling a difference in fascia, like even if it's just sitting here or standing up or something like that, that's simple?
Yeah, absolutely. So something fun that we can do, depending on where everyone is who's listening. I have a lacrosse ball. My one son plays lacrosse, so we have them all over the house. But you can use a tennis ball, you can use a soup can, anything you can get underneath your foot to roll around. Go find it. But what you want to do first is if you stand up and bend over and just reach for the floor. Um, you can just dangle your arms if you're able to touch your toes. Some people can get flat handed. Like, just see where your natural stretch is. And then you want to take that round object and you can stand, you can sit, but roll that object underneath. Like, do your right foot first, doesn't matter. But choose a foot for about 30 seconds, roll it underneath your foot, and then switch and do your other foot. If you have two of whatever, you can be very efficient and roll both at the same time. There's no magic to this, but a good 30 seconds, roll it underneath and then stand back up and do the same stretch. You will be amazed at how you're able to stretch further and it feels so much more easy. That's a classic example of how you're affecting that entire fascia chain going down the front of you. That's how you can affect your own fascia. So if you ever watch when you get body work done or massages, a lot of times they'll take your ankles and kind of pull both legs. They kind of traction it. That's affecting your whole fascia. Or sometimes they'll take your head and your occipital ridge, that little notch in your neck, and they'll kind of traction and pull your head up. That's a fascia release that you can hold. And when you do it on one end or the other, your entire body is getting benefit from it. And that's why I love fascia so much. You don't necessarily always have to be where you are to affect the fascia throughout your whole body.
I'm excited to try this because I think a lot of people listening are going to be like, I have tight hamstrings. So when I stand up and I bend over to touch my toes, like that is a very tight area where a lot of people can't, keep their legs mostly straight. And so I think that's going to be a really fun experiment to try. So thanks for that. That's really cool. Well, we do have one more episode coming up with Amanda, but before we head to that one, Amanda, where are you at on social media? Where can people follow you?
Yep, you can find me on Facebook, you can do Instagram, but I would say the best spot is really my website, www.chinupsmiles.com. You can find all sorts of information about myofunctional therapy, about me, my journey, and yeah, go find out my website. And there's also a way that you can click, you can connect with me that way. And we can always jump on a free 15-minute virtual consult where we can talk about all great things and I can answer your questions.
Perfect. Well, I'm pretty excited for this last episode too, because I feel like this is a big topic for families, especially ones with younger kids, is can braces actually be avoided if they are following, talking to someone like you, seeing maybe an airway dentist and being proactive about the structure of our mouths and the way that we breathe. Is breathing related? Are breathing and braces correlated, right? And so that's kind of where we're going to head in the next episode. So stay tuned for that one. It's coming up next.
If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.